Now then, everybody, and welcome to the Wedding Mavericks podcast with Lindsay and Jules, a podcast for wedding videographers and photographers where we discuss all aspects of running a business, developing technical knowledge and skills, and pushing your creativity. Wedding Mavericks podcast is sponsored by Divine Studios, a creative agency based in Leeds, helping businesses across the globe develop web experiences and brand identities. If you're looking for help with your branding or website, get in touch with them for a no-obligation chat to see how they can help. And if you mention Wedding Mavericks, you'll get 10% discount on their services. Thanks, Divine, for sponsoring the podcast. So, we are the last episode that we recorded. We kind of had a bit of a cliffhanger finish to it. So this podcast is going to be kind of continuing that story from, the 5-year journey that we've been on since we started our business. And we'd got to effectively a couple of years ago. We'd been through the first 3 years. We've given it a different title for this one because it is more focused around a particular topic, but also kind of what's happening now. And I'd say, even though that last 2 years for many people have been slow and different, I think we've all experienced a range of emotions and workflow situations in that last couple of years that have been abnormal. For us, it was it's been lots of different things. It's created some unexpected changes, but it's also ended up creating a lot of clarity, and that's kind of going to be the theme, is that the kind of tail end of this story, the tail end of this 5 years, if you like, is how out of something quite, unexpected, bad, can come a lot of clarity and a lot of positive things. So,
and the way it kind of should have been from the start.
Yes, it made us realise a lot of things and made us reset a lot of things.
Yeah.
So, where do we get to, Linz?
So, we got to, I remember finishing on a big, and then, but then, what came was the pandemic, and everything just kind of all at once, not just in the business, but kind of in our family lives, which I know you'll come on to. Things just seemed to quite quickly appear like they were falling apart. So we've been through this really kind of hard work, emotional roller coaster, tough time, but we could kind of see that on the horizon there were all these positive things, and that year 2020 was just geared up to just really take off for us, and all of a sudden it just feels like it all came crashing down.
Yeah.
We imagine that you all experience this too. Many of you experience this. If you were already in the industry at that time, and perhaps if you were doing something else, you felt that in a different way with what you were doing back at that point. I remember we tried to be really proactive, didn't we? In terms of reaching out to our couples, trying to think how best to kind of manage expectations and let them know that despite kind of what was going on, from our perspective, we were still completely committed to being there for them on their day. So even though that ultimately meant they're going to move their dates, that was something that we wanted to help them with.
Yeah.
Because we didn't want people to just cancel. Because let's face it, us included, it was just panic, wasn't it? And so the kind of understandable knee-jerk reaction to that for people likely would have been to just cancel their weddings, cancel, there'll be many aspects of their life that they would have had to kind of think about doing that with. So,
maybe they wouldn't just cancel, but because this was something that none of us had experienced before, it was a bit hard to actually predict what people would do.
Yeah.
You would sort of, because I think a lot of people, they probably thought, I mean, I don't know what you guys experienced, but there was quite a few people that just put it back a few months, didn't they? So if their wedding was in June, they were trying to put it back to like August, September. And that was kind of maybe, there was a good 4 or 5 of those that didn't put it back a year or anything. They just tried to put it back a few months because at that point people were thinking maybe it'll be all blown over in a few months. Then there were other people that were, and I think that was because different venues were treating things in different ways. So they were like, some venues kind of could see the writing on the wall and they didn't know how they would fit people in the later summer because they were already full, they were already busy. So they were just telling people next year or the year after. Yeah. Sorry.
No, that's okay.
Just thought that was a relevant thing, wasn't it?
Yeah. So kind of with all that uncertainty, and even though that's how we felt about it, we didn't have a clue what was going to happen. No. But it was important for us, I think, to show like a strong position and try to be reassuring, be empathetic, but kind of try to give them that confidence that it's okay, regardless of what kind of this brings.
Yeah.
We still have that commitment to you. So let's think about moving your date. And we did it in a way, I remember we did it in a way where we recorded a video and sent a video message to all our couples, because I think on the morning that
we'd gone into the studio, I remember, because we even recorded a video that you can watch on the YouTube channel somewhere, where it's us basically sat at a desk going through the problem solving of like, what do we do? We were literally just recorded as talking, didn't we?
Yeah.
Talking through what are the options, what do we do, how do we treat people, how do we make this work, how do we keep the business kind of going financially? Yeah. And we talked that through, yeah.
Yeah, because it was the kind of catalyst for it was because so this is maybe about 4 or 5 days before the actual national lockdown was called in the UK on the 23rd of March. So it was a week before that, and the restrictions had been talked about and things were starting to be shut down, but then I think the government kind of felt, okay, people are just not getting this, before they brought that in the 23rd. And so that previous week, things were still kind of open and things were happening. I was on my way into uni that morning and got a call off one of our clients saying, my parents are going to travel from abroad. I think we just need to move this on for a few months because they're not going to be able to travel, basically. So I rang you and you say, yeah, I've had a phone call. Oh, there's an email come through now. So I ring uni and say, I'm not coming in, this is quite an urgent thing for the sake of sort of our business. I'm going to need to go to work. I won't be coming in today. I met you at the office and that's when we did it. And like you say, we wanted to kind of get ahead of, and just to give that reassurance to people, let them know that we kind of, even though we didn't really have a plan, but don't worry, it's okay. The plan is at the moment, we're still committed to you. Let's think about how we then move the date for you.
Because you don't want someone to be in a position where they've already made their decision that they're going to cancel the wedding or whatever, and then you just get told and the decision's already made. Whereas we wanted to say, include us in this decision. Yeah. But we'll do everything we can to make make it still possible for us to capture your wedding if it's still happening, whenever it's happening. Yeah. And I think that worked. And I know, plenty of people have kept all their couples, but I think it's a testament that other than the odd person who, for their own personal reasons, ended up cancelling the wedding, I think there was only 1 or 2 out of 30 or 40 weddings that actually ended up cancelling. We didn't have streams and streams of them cancelling, so maybe that was just luck, maybe that was something we did, I don't know.
Yeah, but that's how we managed it.
Yep.
And I mean, so on the surface, trying to give that reassurance, give an effective method of communication to them, show competence in how you run your business and deal with unexpected situations, if you like, but then kind of under the surface for us, essentially you're looking at most of your income being completely wiped off the books, and that's a scary situation.
Yeah.
When it's your household income.
Yeah.
And neither of us knew when it would come back. Again, I'd imagine you were in the same position. None of us really knew when this was going to come back, if it would all come back. Just a position of total limbo, almost. Yeah.
And obviously we all know we won't kind of carry on talking through the entire period of the pandemic from how did we deal with this and how did we deal with that perspective, because that's kind of, it's been and gone, and I have done previous podcasts where I talked about it at the time. But kind of moving to the state of our business at that time, because that's what this story is about. The timing of us, because in the last episode we were talking about we were just in the process of turning from sole trader status to limited company, or partnership status to limited company, and the timing of forming in that company was really unfortunate. Obviously, it's a bit unprecedented to have a pandemic and all businesses shut down, etc. And so that's why you can't really kick yourself for something that you couldn't have foreseen, because it's never really happened before. So it's not like you've got, well, there's a 5% chance this might happen, whereas this was like we hadn't even thought of this happening. So we're now a limited company, and we are in the process of setting up payroll. And the payroll was being set up as lockdown occurred. So I'm literally one of the first things when they start announcing furlough pay and grants and things. I'm on the phone to the accountant going, what does this mean? Like, for us, like, what should we do? Should we do anything? Is it going to be okay? And basically, after he'd looked into it a little bit more, and they released some dates on when you had to have had your payroll set up by a certain date, and he basically said, you've missed out by 3 days. So like your payroll won't go through to this day, and you had your first payroll had to have gone through by this day, and it was 3 days over. So that was it. We couldn't claim furlough money. We couldn't claim the SACE grant because we were now technically employed. We were no longer self-employed, so we couldn't apply for that. From a tax perspective, because we put so much money back into the business, we've been just constantly investing for the last few years. This was the first time we were going to actually start making some decent money out of it. You know, we were basically wouldn't have been able to claim much anyway, but that's a different point. So we were in a bit of a state. The tens of thousands that we should be earning in the coming months was gone, because at this point we can see everyone's postponing. Our cash flow for the immediate future wouldn't last very long. We probably had a few months to kind of keep going. And other than an initial grant of 10k that we got for having the studio, that the government sort of paid out within the first few weeks of the pandemic and the lockdown, we didn't get any business support whatsoever. So no furlough, no grant, and there wasn't really anything else we could do. At this point, we're in the middle of writing our final dissertations for uni. Our 4-year-old and our 9-year-old are permanently at home because the schools are closed. And for the first 3 weeks of the lockdown, so I won't dwell on this too much, but just to put you in the picture of what kind of stress was going on over this time, and everybody had their own different stress, but this is ours. My grandma had been in like hospital and then a rehabilitation home and then a care home since October time 2019. We're now in March 2020. We've just managed to get her before the pandemic started becoming a thing. She's been at home for a couple of weeks. We managed to get her home and get carers coming into the house, but she couldn't be on her own all day and all night, and obviously the carers coming in's one thing, but she got really poorly. Now we don't know what it was, we don't know what illness she ended up having, but it kind of coincided with the week lockdown started, and I had a decision to make because we had to isolate, and we didn't want to be moved. We weren't allowed to drive to and fro addresses, and I didn't want to be transmitting infection. You know, my grandma was poorly. The last thing she needed was COVID, so I ended up having to move in there and basically stay there and isolate in her house for 3 weeks. And in that 3 weeks, unfortunately, she passed away. So I had 3 weeks of, it was not a nice situation. And not only that, I'm away from you and I'm away from the kids and you're without me and everybody's in this weird situation where the world's shut down and we're all at home all the time. I mean, it was bizarre, wasn't it? So emotionally, this kind of drained us all as a family because we couldn't be together when this awful thing was happening, and I was away from the family. They were without me. I was basically watching my grandma die, and it took after that, it took a month to sort out my grandma's funeral and gather ourselves and understand more about what was happening, the long-term effects of what was happening and what the world was going to look like from like a just life perspective, let alone how we were going to make money. Because at this point we just sat there, aren't we, with we didn't have any answers because the government hadn't really given any at this point. By mid-May, we knew we needed to take some drastic action to survive. So in hindsight, looking back, you know, some of the decisions we then made over these next few months, we didn't make the right ones, but we didn't really have any yardstick to measure it on or previous knowledge to go against, did we? So we just kind of made the decisions we felt like we needed to make at the time. Yeah.
And I think in terms of sort of revenue in the business, or money to pay ourselves, we stopped paying ourselves then. So no wages coming in, if you like. The only option at that point, in terms of, well, not any assistance, but the only other available option was to claim universal credit. So benefits for, in effect, being a kind of, I guess, unemployed.
Yeah. Well, essentially we were, because we weren't paying ourselves anything, even though we were still working on the business, trying to keep it going.
Yeah. Which is so, not that pride was a thing in this, but it was an unusual thing because it's the first time that either of us in our lives have needed to kind of go through that process. But, you know, what I will say is without it, we would not have survived. We would not have been able to kind of put food on the table, if you like, for a number
I'm sure
of
we would
months.
somehow, but we'd probably have like stack of credit card debt or something.
Yeah. So we kind of still, there's no sort of obvious end in sight or no clear kind of route out of what's happening, you know, with a view to being able to see, okay, well, by this month it's okay because you'll be able to just go business as usual and get back to doing what you were doing. We just didn't understand how long it was kind of going to take to get things back on track. So again, always trying to be proactive, I guess, or kind of think, okay, this is the situation as it is. Instead of sitting still, what can we do then? What can we think about, consider here? And the thing in the back of my mind always was, we both left a previous career, and so our business now was the whole family household income, as I know we've said a number of times. But we didn't know when that might change, and so for me, I started to think, all right, you started the business. You're the creative brains behind it, and all the while, even still when you were at your nan's, you know, and throughout us doing our degrees, you really were managing this. I would come to the weddings and I would be involved in sort of client communications, but you were the one running it. And so in terms of bringing an income into the house and thinking about kind of financial stability and security for the future, I thought, well, it makes sense for me to be the one who looks at going back into a career or getting a job. And look how unexpectedly this has all come about. So if you're going to do something, make it count and make it something that's recession proof. So I knew I didn't want to go back into the police. Before I'd left the police and started my degree, I was in a role where I was working with young people and their kind of rehabilitation after offending and things like that. And it's sort of reignited an interest in working with young people that I thought before I left the police and before the business was a thing, I thought, well, part of my route out of there is to start to sort of re-educate myself and look to go into something whereby I might work with young people or maybe be able to teach them. But it wasn't clear, and it certainly wasn't set in stone. But here at kind of early summer 2020, I kind of thought, well, I've just done this business degree. In terms of teaching that as a subject, it's secondary age kids, so it's teenagers, it's young people that I was working with previously. And I've got a real kind of modern take on textbook business studies, if you like. And I think I'd love to be able to kind of teach young minds, young business minds and entrepreneurs of the future. I'd love to do that in the classroom, and looked into teaching as a career and we're not sure. We found out there was a bursary available, a short bursary, which if I was to do it, that would give us a little bit of income each month. And I don't know, a lot of soul searching. It felt like it was quite a quick decision in some respects, didn't it?
I think you decided to do it in space of a few weeks. Didn't you have to redo your maths again?
Oh my goodness, yeah.
Because they said that the maths certificate that you'd got like a few years earlier that didn't count, so they made you do your maths GCSE again in space of 2 weeks or something. I didn't think we were going to do that. Yeah. So anyway, kids. Long story short, the kind of window of opportunity to be able to enrol and have that in place for September 2020 was closing quite quickly. And through the kind of universities that I would have elected to do my course through, the school placements, to do as part and parcel of your course, there weren't any left, basically. So I even had to... I was cold calling schools. I was emailing schools saying, "Give me a job for free.
Can I do my teacher training at your school?" And luckily I found one and had an amazing year. Had a fantastic year and an amazing experience doing that. And that's what I did, September to July 21. Absolutely love that, and that takes us up to kind of
I mean, back to kind of the business side of things. So Lindsay's teaching, or she's training, which kind of was starting to send us in a little bit of a different direction, albeit temporarily. But we didn't know how long you wouldn't be able to like have close contact with the public, how long till weddings would happen, how long till you'd be able to do any kind of photography or videography work that wasn't business related. Because you could by this point, by late summer, you could do sort of certain business things as long as you were taking precautions and wearing PPE and all that sort of thing. But the wedding thing, they were only happening with like a limited number of guests. People weren't really wanting to do that in the general terms. I know that there was a lot of photographers that were managing to get these micro weddings, but I'll be honest, I never went in on that because I just thought, well, I saw the prices that people were offering these for, and I just thought I'd be better off trying to get work with businesses, because that's actually more what it would help us in the long term too, by building up relationships with businesses. So that's kind of the route I went down. But in terms of the studio, we've got this studio that's just sat there, and by this point, the cash flow is starting to get tight, and we didn't know when we were going to be able to open the studio again, and there's no funding coming through. So the overheads, even though the overheads weren't high for a business premises. They were quite modest. We didn't have thousands of pounds extra to keep spending and running this thing that we didn't know how long we wouldn't be able to use it for. And because it had taken so long to renovate, we'd already spent so much money without it generating any income. And now it was potentially going to sap the last bit of money that we had left in the business at a time when we're potentially going to have to fold the whole thing and both go get alternative jobs, alternative employment. So there's no long-term contract for the studio because it's in this old mill and it's like a one month, 3 month or whatever rolling contract. So we decided to walk away. This is kind of August, September time. We've spent 10K, well over 10K, probably 15 plus. I don't actually know I never worked it out. It was too painful to work out the exact amount of money, on everything that we spent. But we spent over 10K renovating it, furnishing it, decorating it. We'd spent over a year doing the work because we'd had to kind of do it around other stuff, around the studies, around work. And it literally took blood, sweat and tears. There was a lot of tears, a lot of frustration, a lot of, I wish I'd never fucking done this. And basically, we'd only put the signs up for the studio and finished painting the walls and stuff literally a few weeks before the pandemic happened and we went into lockdown. So it was super painful. By this point, I'd been going to it for a few months, just to work in there a couple of days a week, with nobody obviously coming in. It was just me. By September that year, we'd moved out, but we had nowhere to work from. We had nowhere to store all this stuff. We'd accumulated a lot of stuff because we were going to do proper studio shoots. We had huge parabolic umbrellas and loads of stands and lights, and I painted an entire wall as like a big massive green screen. We had like a cyclorama, Infinity Cove. I mean, it were kitted out, and we had a lot of gear stored there. We had nowhere to put it. So I started converting the garage, which is where we're sat now. That's another story. Won't go into that now. But again, this literally was just some old dusty garage before that. So towards the end of the year, the furlough scheme was extended. There were a shit ton more grants handed out to businesses with premises. I mean, like, some of the grants that people were getting were just, they were for especially for a business like ours, that the rent wasn't very expensive. So the amount of money that you were actually getting given was like 3 times, or we would have been getting given was 3 times more than the rent. So it would have replaced some of the other income we'd lost. It's crackers, So in hindsight, we should have kept the studio, and we should have kept paying ourselves through payroll, because the furlough scheme got extended, and by getting extended later on in the year, they switched the date to when you had your payroll set up. So it was no longer had to be set up by a certain date in March. It had to be set up by a certain date, I think in October or something like that. So basically, if we'd have carried on paying ourselves come October, we'd have been able to claim furlough for the next year. So we'd have been able to, I'm not going to say benefit from that, because it's not about getting one up on the system. It's about the fact that the system was supporting everybody, and we felt like, or not everybody, but it was supporting a lot of people, and we felt like we went through the cracks on all this support because of the circumstances. But had we known what would happen and we'd have made some different decisions, we might have actually benefited from some of that support later on in the year. And all we needed to do was just hang on another couple of months, which we could have physically done had we have known. So, crikey, it was very frustrating. We'd probably literally ended up being tens of thousands of pounds better off altogether. So we've now reached 2020, at the end of 2020, and through that year we didn't shoot a single wedding. I did one shoot for another photographer. They just needed someone to do because their husband did video, and they just needed, he couldn't do it, they just needed someone to come and shoot the video. So I shot the video, and I did end up editing it for her. And that was it. That was the only wedding in 2020. But the business still generated around 30k. But here's the kind of kicker with that. Apart from a small number of commercial jobs that weren't particularly well paid, there were far more work than I was getting paid to do them, but it was a desperate thing of just take whatever is available at the time. The majority of that 30k came from the amazing couples who'd agreed to pay us in advance for shooting their wedding. So, you know, they'd postpone their wedding to 21 or 22. Well, I think they were all 21 at first. But they said they would pay us the full amount earlier on in that summer. And had they not done that, I'm not sure what would have happened. We'd have either had a huge amount of debt, because the bounce back loan that we took would have basically gone towards keeping the business going, or we would have had to fold the business. So without that, that would have, that probably would have been the end, or it certainly would have put us in a bad place. Yeah. However, the flip side of it is we're still shooting weddings now, and we were shooting them all last year, where we weren't really getting paid for them. So, I think there's still 4 or 5 this year that we've done some already, but we won't get paid for them now because we've already been paid 2 years ago. Yeah. And there was plenty last year. So we had to take on more weddings than we anticipated, to both last year and this year, to try and fill that in, basically. But that's how we survived, and that's what I think everybody was doing, was just doing whatever they could to make it through. I know we've talked to plenty of photographers that have said that they're still carrying loads of debt. Like, they went well into the bounce back loan, and they're going to be paying that off for a long time. Other people, they went and got jobs working in meat factories and all sorts of stuff just to try and keep some money coming in. So, yeah, because it
was about survival for
for
so many of us, and the hope that would all bounce back from this. There would be a turning point that would be able to come back from it. Kind of positive aspect of this particular period for us was that, because of the way, and we talked a little bit about it before, because of the way in which we'd communicated with the couples and helped our couples to be able to move their wedding, we did keep just about all of the bookings that we originally had. Yeah. There was one case that ended up cancelling because unfortunately I made an error in judgment of.
Oh, that one I forgot about.
And that came from a conversation with a photographer, actually, where we were going to be working photographer and then ourselves filming that wedding, and the conversation between us was, well, kind of legally, there's the client wants to move the wedding again. Right now, legally, there's nothing in place to say that there's any reason to move the wedding at the moment, and so the photographer wasn't sure whether.
As in, there was no restrictions in place.
No restrictions
she didn't want to go ahead with the wedding on the first postponement date.
Yeah, so I wanted to just knock it
on
ahead
again.
Another year. So there was just kind of a bit of a discussion. I think they were kind of thinking out loud almost, and it kind of planted a seed in my mind anyway of, should we be charging a bit more than if that's what we want? Should there be a small charge on top for people wanting to do that, when really, at the moment, there doesn't appear to be a reason why the wedding wouldn't go ahead. And so to knock it on again, and just kind of trying to think, well...
And the wedding could have happened because it would have been September last year. So by then, weddings were happening as normal, pretty much. and it could have happened. So it was more of a choice thing, wasn't it? That they wanted to move to the year after.
Yeah.
And they hadn't they'd booked quite some time ago, so they hadn't paid a massive amount. So the suggestion was it would be, there'd be a couple £100 extra, which we thought wasn't really that big an issue.
No. Because they wanted to move it to a peak day ahead in the future as well, and the original booking had come some 3 years previous to that, so it would have been 4 years down the line. And with how pricing's moved on and the kind of, I suppose, what's available within what we're charging for now. Anyway, I learned a valuable lesson, because the client said that they weren't happy with that, and unfortunately then, from her perspective, she no longer wanted to kind of proceed. We
would have still been filming a wedding, but we just gave her a way out, didn't we? Because we just thought, this is soured now, and we don't really want to film someone's wedding when they're being a bit shitty with us now, because that's not what we were intending.
No, definitely not. It was, but instead, there was resistance on their part to want to just have a conversation on the phone, and I really wanted the chance just to be able to talk that through and kind of explain that, but it was done by emails, and it was just it was a shame, was that, but
one out of all of them, though. Yeah, it was a learning thing.
Yeah, definite learning curve for me. With don't always get it right, but thankfully, in terms of all our other bookings, pretty much we'd all managed to kind of work together and sort of swap dates. So that was a really good thing, a really positive thing for us. We were still really busy with inquiries as well, which was a strange thing, wasn't it? Because here we are in this world of not actively being able to sort of do what we've come to love, and sort of we're moving people's dates, yet there are people, the world's still turning in one respect, wasn't it?
People are still planning.
People are still getting engaged, people are still planning for the future, and so there were new inquiries coming in. So across 2020, bizarrely, we had over 250 inquiries. So, that gave us massive reassurance, didn't it? Because that did give us hope for the future. That did keep things positive for us, because we thought, okay, at some point then, we've just got to carry on riding this storm, because at some point then the future could look bright again. Like we said, the world's still turning for people. People are not stopping making their plans for the future, and so that was a wonderful thing. That's definitely something that kind of kept our spirits up.
It was more about whenever things do start to open back up, that there's something to be positive about.
Definitely,
we should be busy.
Definitely, because the demand is still there for photography, videography services. Definitely.
Yeah.
So we can't, from that period of time, we couldn't give more accurate information of kind of where those inquiries completely were coming from, because at this point, with sort of the CRM that we were using, there wasn't an accurate way of actually, not like there is now, there wasn't an accurate way of us being able to pinpoint exactly what was kind of, where was the seed planted for that person in terms of their inquiry, where did that come from. So we're not able to kind of go through that. To hazard a guess, we would kind of say maybe Google or social media.
Yeah, I think most of them were from Google at that point, just because we didn't have something that captured it statistically, but I did have a free text box on the inquiry form, and that Google was the one that came up most. So, yeah.
So, that's good. Inquiries are still coming in. Things are kind of looking positive then, but like sort of many of us, many of you, we definitely learn at this point not to kind of, or with the best will in the world, try not to overstretch ourselves. And so ensuring that you have, savings buffers, if at all possible, different contingencies, because you just don't you just do not know what's around the corner. the money that our business generated in that year covered our costs over a very slow 18-month period. And as you mentioned, you know, there was, thankfully, because of the bounce back loan there, that helped us. And so with what was left, we tried to still kind of make positive business moves in terms of our marketing. So we put what money we could into marketing, because we'd had all these inquiries, and like we said, because we could kind of almost in the very distant future see a little bit of a light at the end of the tunnel. So still to have kind of, again, sat still and not done anything at that point in time, I think when things did start to open again, I think we still would have been in a really difficult position, because there'd have been no prospects, there'd have been nothing in the pipeline for.
Yeah, if we'd have just waited for things to open back up, but you haven't gone after getting the work in.
No. So it was really important for us, again, trying to think proactively, not just thinking about what's in front of you. Try to think beyond it. There's these little snippets of positivity. So what can we do in addition to that then to try to put things in an even stronger position for us going forward? And so we looked at our marketing options, as I said, and just to make sure that as I said, we came back fighting. We were in a stronger position, and we would hopefully kind of get the business back to a similar place of where it was, or where it was kind of forecast to be in 2020 version 1. Looking back over that sort of period of time, I think we would agree on this, it certainly helps us to be better as a business going forward.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, I mean, we even started the year, didn't we? Consciously goal setting, and being very intentional about that, because it's not something we've ever done before. Yeah. And like you've said, we're coming into our 5th year in business, and so it's shocking that we've never consciously kind of sat down and
but like
and
we said, we've
that.
had a lot of plates spinning.
Absolutely. So
which plate do you let smash on the floor if you're going to goal set?
Of course. And so yes with that, but what a great experience to have had, to just teach us some valuable lessons.
Definitely. To
allow us to go to a point of reset and almost start then to move forward in the way that we always should have done, like I said at the beginning, because I haven't gone on to be a teacher.
Have you not?
So, you know, I did the year's training. I worked for a little while as a teacher, and I will say I wasn't naive or didn't understand just how much work was sort of involved in being a teacher, and had the utmost respect. And as I say, that training year, I absolutely loved it, really, really loved it. But in that time alone, you were trying to keep the business sort of ticking over. You were full-time with the kids. I was, in effect, working a full-time job that I would leave the house at about 7:30 in the morning for, return home at about 6 in the evening, and then have 6, 7, and then still have uni work to do or lesson planning on top of that in the evening. That spilled over into the weekends, and so if I wasn't working on a project with you, which there wasn't much of it at that time, but still in terms of quality of family life and balance, you know, it took an even bigger hit, and on my health as well when I did start the teaching job full time, because things had started to happen again with weddings and reopen up, and the calendar, you know, was full in that sort of last 6 months of last year. Not skipping ahead too much here, but
just a bit.
Again, the emphasis kind of was on you to sort of do all of that, and it just, we had a decision to make, because you could see what impact that was having on me. It was having an impact on us as a family, and so there was a discussion and a decision had to be made of whether or not that was something that I wanted. Did I want to do that so passionately, so much, over working on our business and investing into our business, that I was willing to kind of sacrifice my own sort of health and well-being to make that work, my family's own health and well-being, and the kind of the quality time and the balance that we'd worked so hard for and that we left the police for in the first place. You know, why did I want to go back into that environment? And so, you know, breaking it down from that perspective, I do have a passion for working with young people, and I absolutely loved the teaching. And hopefully in the future, it's something that we've talked about. We'd love to be able to incorporate into what we're doing right now. So hopefully we will. But, you know, life is too short.
Yeah.
And so the decision was to step away from teaching, and kind of a reset. You know, that word reset, it's so relevant to so many different aspects of kind of our lives over that 18-month period, and to what's brought us here now. And yeah, I'm all in. We're all in. We're all systems go.
So yeah, as you can sort of listening to this crazy story, 2021 was a roller coaster of a year. You know, we started the year with all this uncertainty. Lindsay's teacher training / working full time, and we had focused. And at that point, we were focusing on you doing that, and me. I was going to try and run the business, but obviously I was also sort of doing the lion's share with the kids, because you were working quite intensely, and we'd kind of, prior to that, been structuring the business, working as a two shooter team, hadn't we? Mm-hmm. Whether that was doing just video, just photo, or photo and video, the majority of the jobs that we were trying to get, because obviously we could charge more for two people, we were trying to do them together, because it would be an easier day. We'd probably give a better product at the end of it, and hopefully that would be a good justification to charge more price-wise. So that was the plan. The plan was changing. We were going back to, I was going to try and be a sole shooter and get most of the jobs as a sole shooter. It was so like all over the place, wasn't it? We just didn't have a steer. And you're doing uni assignments and you're working. There's no clarity on when weddings are coming back. And, you know, I'm honestly questioning, am I going to have to get a job? Am I going to what am I going to do? And then, like, for everybody, it was like just the most bizarre thing, because June onwards, it was insane. It was intense. Everything just kind of started happening again. And between kind of June and December, we shoot 40 odd weddings. A third of them are photo and video together. So, you know, from an editing perspective, if you do photo and video as a, you know, whether it's if it's a sole shooter, yeah, but like as a pair, it doesn't necessarily mean you split the editing 50-50. I mean, we do sometimes, but you've still got two lots of editing, two lots of processing, two lots of files, two lots of uploads, and you're delivering a bigger product. So it's going to take more time to do the post-production on that than if you were just, you know, at this point, you know, if I got a photo wedding, I could edit it in one day. I can tell you it'll take me damn sight longer than that to do video and photo together. So you can't process them as quickly, and they're just coming thick and fast, and they're all in that 6-month period. So, you know, you've got a 50-plus wedding workload if you're looking at the editing from those 40 weddings. And there were last-minute jobs coming in all through the year. We were doing corporate work. You're studying. You then get this full-time job, the kids. Oh, man. And we could have done more. We could have taken more work on. There was more work there. But health and happiness had to start taking a higher thing on the priority list than the stability of our finances, and we already knew this, because that's why we started doing this in the first place. That's why we left as careers. So I think after the pandemic, certainly back end of last year, start of this year, it was just the reminder we needed, wasn't it, as to what the plan is, what the goal is. And that's why now in this podcast, if you go back and listen to the last sort of 15 episodes of this second series, we started on the business back end, and we've talked through everything that you need to have a successful and sustainable business. Because what successful and sustainable is different to everybody depending on their goals. And at the end of the day, there's no point in having a load of money and a load of work if that doesn't fit with what your actual goal is, which is to have a nice balance. You need a certain amount of money to live. You need a certain amount of money to pay your bills or to do the things that you want to do that are important to you. But, you've got to be purposeful about that. And what the pandemic taught us was how to weather the storm, be resourceful. Actually, things seem to work themselves out, even no matter how shitty it gets. And, the back end, when everything opens back up and money's coming in again and things look good and things are super busy, too busy, that kick up the arse to go, just remember why you are doing this. Yeah. You are not doing this to work as hard and put as much stress on yourself as you did when you had these really secure careers. Yeah. You're supposed to be able to smell the roses. And actually, when we look back on the last 5 years, I smelt the roses a lot less than I ever did in the previous 5 years before we left the police. Because just worked and worked and worked our asses off. And that's our own fault for going to uni at the same time. And obviously, it wasn't our fault that a monkey ate a bat and a pandemic happened or whatever. That's a joke, by the way. I'm not saying that's what happened and cruelty to animals and all that. I'm just joking.
But I think, right, moving on, I think that's why that was one of the biggest things in the decision to step away from the teaching, because what we saw quite quickly was that, and it did, a thing happened where what I should have been teaching wasn't as straightforward when I got to school. Don't tell that story. Okay. So, but because of this additional subject I've been given to teach that I'd never been taught before, my day would be set my alarm for 3 a.m, get up, plan the lessons for that day, go to school, do it, come home 6, 7 o'clock at night, see the kids just in time before they went to bed. Then I'd be planning or marking, go to bed, set the alarm for 3, do it all over again. And that took its toll really quite quickly. And the question was, I'm now 40 years old. 15 years ago, career driven, I would have made that work.
Would you have made it work for 25 grand a year? Yeah, you would. Of course you would.
I would have been, that kind of ambitious, and I think I do have a strong work ethic.
Oh, very strong.
And would have done it. And I did that once upon a time, to the sacrifice of the time that you and I got to spend together. So this is before we had kids.
Yeah, we've already been through all that.
So we've been there, kind of done that. And so that's the thing. It wasn't kind of a hypothetical, if I was younger, I'm a bit old for this now. I've done this once over in our very early days of being married. And so did I want it so badly? Could I justify it so badly to myself, to you three, that I wanted to make that work? And I couldn't. And I couldn't because I knew that I'd stepped away from that career previously in the police because of the control and the demands that it placed upon family life.
Yeah.
And just didn't want that. So, exactly kind of what you're saying, that was a huge part in that, because there'd have certainly been no roses to smell at that point. There.
Yeah. And this is the thing, we whenever you listen to people talking about running their own business, or whenever it doesn't matter, you could be in conversation with people about what careers they do, what jobs they do, because that's when we socialise, that is a tip, talking point, isn't it? It's a topic of conversation is to, how's work? What are you up to? And you've always got people, I've got this new job, new promotion, blah, blah. And that's fine. And when you are focusing on that, climbing the ladder, whatever, and that applies also in running your own business. Mm-hmm. So we still want to build a business, we still want to grow the business, but what we've learned from, our previous careers, and then what sort of we lost track of over the last 5 years, and the last 2 years has kind of brought us back on track, is that we're not doing this just for the financial gain.
No.
Because there's too much more going on in life. And I guess we're labouring that point maybe a little bit at this point, because if you're listening to this story and if you take anything away from it, it is that with the experience we've gained through our previous careers and life, and through what's happened over the last 5 years of running a business, is you really need to be clear on what your priorities and what your goals are. And don't negotiate that for anyone, and don't get sidetracked with what so-and-so's doing. I'll give you an example. I often sit there and I look and I think, when I see people posting these destination weddings, and I think, oh, that looks so nice. And what I've learned as well is, one of the things that I've kind of analysed is destination weddings seems to equal winning awards or getting some kind of elevated status in the industry. Because for some reason, like, a lot of people that win the wedding industry award, they're videographers, they've got destination portfolio or whatever. I'm not saying it's quite as simple as that. There's more to it, but I think that there's something there. And I also know that people talk about destination weddings like some kind of badge of honour, elevated status. And yeah, you might be able to in some cases charge more for destination weddings. You might not. Some people will be doing them for a lot less money than they should. But the thing is, why does that bother me? Why do I feel a little bit of envy when I see those destination weddings, when actually I don't want to travel? I might want to travel every now and then. That might be nice. But I don't want to be on the road. I don't want to be flying in and out of the country every other week doing destination weddings. It wouldn't suit our lifestyle. And I'd end up more miserable than before. So, that's just an example, because that's something that would get talked about amongst people in the industry, destination weddings. So, but there's loads of little things like that you can kind of think about, and depending on what glasses you're looking through it, it will look different and it will feel different for different people, and you've got to stick to what's important to you. So I went on for a right tangent there, didn't I? I could tell you were like looking at me with like them bow selector face. No. Where's he going? Right, we'll try and get back onto the point. So 2021, we generated about 70k. 90% of it were from June onwards. There's also a bunch of weddings we've been paid for in there. Mm-hmm. We've received over 300 inquiries. It did feel like a huge boom. In terms of like marketing and the inquiries and stuff, we were getting like 35% from Google, because now we're measuring it. About 20% of them from Instagram, about 17.5% from Facebook, and the rest were kind of split between other things like personal referrals and things like that from couples, which had slowed down because there hadn't been any weddings happening. So normally there's a steady stream of referrals, because you go to a wedding and film a wedding or photograph a wedding, and you usually get a referral or two from each wedding along the way, but there haven't been any weddings happening. So yeah, and then we move on to 2022, and like we're 4 months in, so we've had over 250 inquiries at this point, just in that first 4 months, which is a bit crazy. And in this year, we'll generate more revenue than we have in previous years. And there's a lot of reasons, because we're now both focusing on the business together. So we're both in this, all our time, work time is focused on this. We're not doing uni anymore. So, in this 5 years in, we've managed to do what we'd
set
intended
to
do.
5 years
right at
ago.
the start. So that's the thing. That's how long it's taken. It's taken 5 years to make it look like it's supposed to look. So don't ever think that when people, they're doing really well in business, they've just started their business and it's booming. you know, it might be looking good, but in terms of, are they actually making money from it? Are they able to live a lifestyle that they're trying to live? You know, is it kind of happening? Is it safe and secure? All that. Are they happy? It's taken 5 years. Of those inquiries, just to mention, a lot of those are from Instagram. We've been running some ads at the start of the year that worked really well, so we'll do some more discussion around that later down the line, because I think things are changing with Instagram at the moment. But and then where are we now?
Yeah, so the last couple of months, again, so we've I was going to say we've tried to kind of include you in what we've been going through, but essentially we've rabbited on, haven't we, about over the podcast that we've done together about the fact that we've been refreshing our branding, having a new website designed, and kind of properly working out the direction of the business moving forward.
For the first time, we feel like we're actually we're purposefully thinking it through rather than going, well, yeah, we'll just do this.
Yeah, and like you say, you know, so in the future, we know that ideally we'd like to include a little bit more work with businesses in what we do, and eventually kind of reduce the number of weddings to try to sort of balance things out a little, because again, just considering the impact on sort of family life, weddings, although there are a lot more weekday weddings happening, you know, it's still predominantly weekends, isn't it? So, and the work with businesses, and it's more specifically kind of charities and not-for-profits and things like that we've got an eye on, hoping to work with. But that's really been the focus for the first few months of the year then.
And just refining. Whoa, that's a word. Refining the brand. Yeah. Because it's taken 5 years to realise the sort of weddings we're really enjoying.
Yeah. It's kind of forced us to kind of have a look inside, if you like, think about what, you know, the identity of who we are then, and what are we all about, what is it that we want to do, and what do we want to convey to people. So that's been massive for us, and you know, with the podcast sponsor to thank for that.
I think, you know, when it comes to branding, and we've talked about branding, so I won't labour the point, but I kind of, because we're talking about 5 years, I think of, if you consider a business like a child, and a child grows up and develops its personality when it gets to certain kind of milestones, doesn't it? And that's kind of what our business has done over the last 5 years. You know, it's grown a personality. And when you're really starting out and your first year or two, it doesn't have one.
No.
You don't really know what it is. It's just trying to learn how to walk and talk. And it's not until, and that's why if you're feeling frustrated with it, you know, the first few months or first couple of years of your business, that things are not quite what you want them to be, that's okay. You're going to work that out down the line. It ain't going to come overnight. It's not going to come in the first 6 months to 2 years. It's taken us 5 years to build an idea of a personality that we are, and that's now what we're going to fully inject. Yeah, we've started to do it before now. It's been we've implemented various things over the way, but it's only now that I actually feel like someone asks a question about, you know, well, what really are you all about? What makes you tick? Why? You know, and I really feel like it's just natural now. There's nothing that's unanswered. So you don't feel frustrated if you aren't there yet. Right, so we're going to move on. We're going to wrap up. But at this point, we probably need to address the fact that we now both have degrees. And we started the previous podcast and in the title saying, like, with no experience, so, like, you know, we had no formal training in photography and media production when we started. And we honestly didn't. And what I'd say is now I've got a degree I've got a first class honours degree in media, moving image and photography. Okay. And the stuff that we learned on the course was relevant to taking pictures and recording video and editing and lots of things, business, branding, being a freelancer, starting a business, all sorts of things. And there was lots of academic writing. You did a business degree, same sort of thing. You've learned about all sorts of things like marketing and branding, and you've learned about all sorts of business concepts. So over that time in our business, we have been learning and educating ourselves. Now, Lindsay might have a slightly different take on this. I had learned everything that I could learn from the course from a practical perspective that I did. I'd already learned it before I started the course. So by the time our business is up and running, you know, the stuff we'd learned in uni, I'd already learned like that already. So from scratch. So in terms of like getting a degree, I don't think it really helped me to run my own photography and videography business.
So why did you do it?
Ooh, do you really want to pull on that thread? I didn't go to uni, and I'm the only one out of my kind of family, you know, cousins, brothers and sisters and that haven't gone to uni. And I was kind of doing this thing where I was changing my life, and I thought, I'll go to uni because that'll help me to feel like I'm, you know, it sounds bad, but give me a little bit more, make me feel a little bit comfortable in my family circle, in my peer groups, you know, like I've got this education. There was like, I need something to fall back on. Should like, we try to make a business from nothing. That's quite a high percentage rate for failure. Mm-hmm. So I thought, you know, I need something to be able to get a job, or at least some kind of qualification to help me get a job down the line. And I felt like we needed it for, I felt like I needed it for, what's the word I'm looking for?
You needed the credential.
The credential. So I needed it to be able to say, I'm qualified to do this. I'm not just some chancer. I've got a degree in photography or a degree in media, so that, you know, people would take you seriously. What I would say might not be everyone's opinion is that's nonsense. So yeah, you can learn a lot more not going to university, but that's quite a controversial statement. And it wasn't that I wasn't good at university, because I did well, but that's not the point. What about you? Lindsay's a school teacher, isn't she? So, you know, she she agrees with the formal education aspect.
No, not wholeheartedly. I would say just because of the nature of the subjects that I'd studied, there are aspects of that I've been able to bring into what we've been doing more recently in understanding our business. Like you said, the marketing, the branding, the sort of identity behind it, and thinking a little bit more about the external environment, if you like, and how that can impact on your business. But what I would say is what there's lots that I took away from my degree, but a lot of and others that might have done a similar kind of topic, you know, it's much of it is focused around larger organisations anyway, and multinationals and things like that, which there are snippets that we can use in what we do, but I don't know. Some relevant, some not.
Maybe
I enjoyed doing it.
It's a different topic for another day, isn't it? Should you do need to go to formal education for becoming a photographer or a filmmaker? We can save that for another
debate that one another day. Yeah.
So there are plenty of people with much more experience in photography and filmmaking, and particularly wedding photography and videography than us. And everyone's going to have their own story and their own journey. And it will have shaped their approach to their creative work and their business. And we feel like it's really important to lean into your story. You know, who you are and how you got there. All the experience that we've discussed in these last 2 episodes have helped us to learn very quickly. And because we just went for it, you know, at like lightning speed, you know, it's been more turbulent because of that. And we've taken risks.
Massive.
And if you've listened to this and you're early on in your journey and you're starting your business or you're in your first year or two, hearing how we approach the last 5 years might have highlighted how you need to take your time, because you might not enjoy taking risks. You might prefer to pace your learning and development. And there are certainly times where we wish we hadn't taken so much on.
Yeah.
And it would have worked better had we not taken so much on. But maybe you're inspired by listening to what we've said, and you feel like there are a lot of opportunities out there if you're prepared to work really hard for a shorter period of time, you know, like really push yourself for a shorter period of time, knowing that then you'll have something, and a short period of time could be 5 years. That's kind of what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
So that you can build something quickly. Hopefully it doesn't take 5 years. If it hadn't been for a pandemic, I think it would have taken 4. But we would love to hear about your experiences of starting and growing your business, whatever stage you're at. So if this has been useful, inspiring, or you found it really boring, let us know. And if you don't want to write an essay, you want to tell us your story, share your story with us, but you don't want to have to type loads of stuff, just leave us a little voice message on Instagram, or you can DM us on other social media platforms at Wedding Mavericks. Because genuinely, we'd love to kind of hear what you think, and we'd love to hear what your story is. So I think that's it, really.
If you are enjoying listening to what we discuss each week, please follow and subscribe if you haven't already. And if you have time to leave us a quick review at all, we would really, really appreciate that. Because there are some on there, but we can't read them yet because we haven't.
Because there ain't enough. You can visit the website at weddingmavericks.com, or you can watch us on YouTube at Wedding Mavericks. And please, wherever you're if you're watching this or if you're listening to it on a podcatcher, please subscribe or follow wherever you're doing that. We're gonna probably move the day of release. We should be releasing this tomorrow on Friday, and we're gonna probably just release them on Friday. And the reason is because we imagine most people who listen to this podcast are probably doing weddings or whatever at the weekend, so they might listen to them in the car on the way to weddings and stuff like that. So we're going to try releasing them on Fridays instead for a bit, and that'll probably work better with our schedules, because otherwise we have to try and, if we do it at the start of the week to put them out at the end of the week, that makes more sense for us. We'll be able to do a better routine, I think, doing that. And thank you so much for all your support with the podcast, and thanks to Divine Studios for sponsoring it. And we will catch you again, hopefully, next Friday.
See ya.
Bye.